and welcome to Session F, the Transitions Pop-Ups Service Delivery Model, revolutionizing the transition to adult services and life roles for youth with disabilities and their families. My name is Martha McKay. I'm a physical therapist at Bridgepoint Hospital. I'm here to introduce our speakers, Laura Thompson and Jan McGee. But before I do, firstly, you can insert text-based questions visible on the right-hand side of your screen. To insert, you can insert them during, preferably, or also for your information, you can upvote questions of others to raise them in priority. Secondly, you can raise your hand at the end of the presentation to enter the broadcast and ask for questions verbally. I will call you by will give you permission to enter the broadcast, and you can turn on the camera and microphone and ask your question. And now for our introductions. Laura Thompson is a team lead and occupational therapist at Holland Bloorview Kids Rehabilitation Hospital. Her current role focuses on human-centered design, implementation, and evaluation of novel service delivery models and supports for transition to adulthood. Laura's clinical experience over the past has spans a range of pediatric disability population inpatient outpatient settings. Jan McGee is a family leader as for Holland Bloorview Kids Rehabilitation Hospital. She's been a volunteer for over 12 years on the Family Advisory Committee, most recently providing input in the area of helping Holland Bloorview clients and families make the transition from pediatric to adult healthcare. She also co-facilitates workshops with clinicians and community partners to further the transition initiative. She is a mother of two sons. The youngest, who is 22 years old, has cerebral palsy, is a past client of Holland Bloorview, has transitioned to adult services. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our first speaker, Laura Thompson.
Hi, Martha. Thanks so much. As Martha said, welcome to our presentation, The Transitions Pop-Up Service Delivery Model, revolutionizing the transition to adult services and life roles for youth with disabilities and their families. And again, today we'll be presenting on behalf of Holland Bloorview Kids Rehabilitation Hospital. Next slide, please.
Yes, thank you for joining us today. So the objectives of this session is to, first of all, introduce the innovative Transitions Pop-Up Service Delivery Model for the transition to adult life for youth with disabilities and families. So today we'll be focusing on bridging from pediatric to adult services. Secondly, we will illustrate how we brought key elements of the model to life by highlighting examples of interagency partnerships. And third, we will share program evaluation findings that capture the experiences of youth, families, and staff involved. Next slide.
For some more context, again, we're joining you today from Holland Bloorview Kids Rehabilitation Hospital. Holland Bloorview is Canada's largest pediatric rehabilitation hospital and is renowned for its expertise in partnering with clients and families to provide exceptional care. Next slide, please. As you can see here, we work with children, youth, and families who have a range of disabilities, including those with the most complex needs. And go to the next slide.
So from 2017 to 2022, Holland Bloorview embarked upon the design and implementation of a comprehensive transition strategy with the goal of revolutionizing the care experience for youth with complex disabilities, transitioning from pediatric to adult life. So one of the goals of the strategy was to design, implement, and evaluate innovative methods to bridge the transition from pediatric to a meaningful adult life for youth and families. Next, please.
Over the past 5 years, the Bridging to Adult stream of the transition strategy has focused on creating change in the transition to adult life through the co-creation of novel programs and services with key client, community, and policy level stakeholders, which you can see in our visual here. The ultimate goal has been to create innovative partnerships in the adult sector, really to facilitate a seamless, streamlined, and importantly, humanistic transition to a meaningful adult life for youth with complex disabilities who are graduating from pediatric services. Next slide, please.
So the experience of moving from typically coordinated and holistic pediatric services to sort of the more fragmented adult systems can be complicated and understandably stressful for clients and families. And the transition strategy planned to address inconsistencies and challenges that, had historically impacted the client and family experience when transitioning from Holland Bloorview to adult services. So there was known variation in when and how clients and families were informed of the need to apply to adult funding and services, as well as a variation in the types of transition support provided. Also, clients and families, were experiencing understandable apprehension when moving key supports to new agencies during a time of complex life transition. And I can completely relate to this, as my son Wesley had been coming to Holland Bloorview for over 17 years. And then all of a sudden, we were faced with the challenges of finding adult services and applying to different agencies and leaving the pediatric support network and relationships that we developed throughout those early years. And then in the adult sector, service providers were expressing a desire for earlier, more meaningful interactions with clients and families, and opportunities to make the process more friendlier and just more successful for all involved. Next slide, please.
So to find innovative solutions for these challenges, we really capitalized on human-centered design work that was already in progress through the transition strategy. So the whole strategy in general was using human-centered design. And then for this particular challenge, we really honed in on portions of that work. So just in general, the human-centered design approach that's outlined above aims to solve complex issues by approaching challenges from a stance of curiosity and grounding in the work is really end users' experiences and emotions. The transition strategy partnered with these end users, so clients, families, and over 30 adult agencies to engage in 3 years of human-centered design work. And through this, we developed, tested, refined, and implemented innovative solutions from both theoretical and real-world standpoints. Next slide, please. As you can see here, we also like to have fun while doing this. So you can see examples here of our innovation in action. Those are some photos of the work, creative work through our design events. And we really try, this is pediatrics, we really tried to use creative and engaging and fun methods here. You can see some drama, some craft models, but to really, be innovative in the types of solutions we were developing. And what resulted from that overall design work was many solutions, but we're going to focus in on one specific innovation, a new service delivery model that came out of all this work called Transition Pop-Up Service Delivery Model. Next slide, please. So this transitions pop-up model is really a systematic approach to planning and implementing events that meet a wide range of needs through a variety of transition to adulthood topics for youth with complex disabilities and their families. So for example, health and wellness, personal care and attendance supports, activities for after high school, civic participation, relationships and sexuality, leisure and recreation, and the list goes on. Importantly, the model outlines a service delivery process that is infinite in its ability to respond to client and family needs in real time. Next slide, please.
So transitions pop-ups are topic-based group events for youth 14 years and older and their families that help them to prepare to gradually bridge the transition to adult life. So across various topics, transitions pop-ups are always grounded in 5 key elements. And these are purposefully designed to reach beyond the status quo of traditional service delivery to more meaningfully meet the needs of youth, families, and community partners. So the 5 key elements are, next slide, please. So community partnerships. The events are always co-hosted by Holland Bloorview and one or more adult agency for authentic relationships and joint accountability of service delivery. So when possible, the events are held outside the walls of Holland Bloorview at the partnering agency or held virtually. Next slide, please. So peer mentoring, the events are always co-facilitated by a youth and or family mentor who fosters a welcoming atmosphere and shares invaluable lived experience related to, sort of the having been there before in the transition to adulthood. Next, please. The next is action. So the events incorporate on-the-spot completion of key transition preparation tasks, such as submitting application forms with staff support or just trying on a new service or program. So kind of like that before you buy approach. Next, please. So information sharing, we share information on relevant transition to adulthood topics that's provided to clients and families in a meaningful way, including experiential learning. And then next, please. And then the warm handover. So events prioritize warm handovers and scaffolded interactions with new adult agencies before graduation from pediatric services. Next, please.
And thanks, Jan. To bring what Jan said to life, we're going to use some examples. So we're going to share 2 examples, 2 different transition pop-up events to really bring these 5 key elements to life through partnerships with 2 adult agencies. So you can see here in orange, first is our transition pop-up we have monthly now with the Ontario Disability Support Program, or ODSP. And the second you can see here in green with a bunch of youth who looked like did some cooking. In the photo will be with our transition pop-up that happens several times a year with March of Dimes Canada's LIFE program. Next slide, please. So first we'll consider the pop-up with the Ontario Disability Support Program, ODSP, which in the previous slide was the picture with the orange background. So some history on this pop-up. In 2018, Holland Bloorview in the Ontario Disability Support Program's Golden Mile Toronto office implemented a new transition pop-up event called Connecting with the Ontario Disability Support Program, or ODSP. I'll refer to it as ODSP from now on. ODSP provides essential financial assistance and employment supports to enable adults with disabilities to live as independently as possible in their communities. Both agencies, so ODSP and Holland Bloorview, had goals of sharing knowledge and expertise, building authentic relationships between staff, clients, and families, and fostering meaningful opportunities to interact with clients as they began transitioning from pediatric services to ODSP. So as Jan said, like earlier in the game. The overall event goals were for clients and families to learn about the ODSP application process and supports in a meaningful way, for clients and families to familiarize themselves with their local office before the formal transition. To hear from a family mentor like Jan with lived experience, and also very importantly for clients and families to submit their applications on the spot with staff support so that they didn't have to leave, go home with a to-do list, figure out how to do this application on their own and eventually submit it. So it was very important that we gave people the opportunity to come, get everything done in a matter of hours. So families and clients felt assured that sort of, everything was done. Next slide, please. So now we're going to go through different elements, again, of this pop-up to highlight. We're still on the ODSP pop-up. So in terms of that information sharing element, we covered a variety of topics tailored to clients and families' needs that were gathered both before and during the event. So this included families were asking like, what is ODSP income support? How do we apply? Who is eligible? And based on those information needs, the session was purposely designed to be interactive. And there were plenty of opportunities to interact with the lived experience mentor and to consult both in the group and privately with staff about individual considerations when applying. Something we kept in mind is that the information and resource provided during the transition pop-up needs to be accessible to clients and families who may be learning about this for the first time, different than sort of staff, like we do this every day, but really to keep in mind, like this is the first time they might be hearing about this. Clients and families may also have developmental considerations and or English as a second language. So because of this, we really strive to create an open and safe environment where participants felt free to ask questions and also engage in honest discussions because, as we all know, there are challenging realities when transitioning to adulthood with a disability, including challenges of living on a fixed income, such as ODSP income supports. So we tried not to sugarcoat it, but really to have honest discussions about sort of what was to come. Information was provided in ways that clients and families reported would be most meaningful to them through when we did our human-centered design process. So, for example, we really tried to avoid pamphlet pushing and stacks of handouts and opted instead for things like brief presentations based on participants' pre-collected best hopes for the event. A lot of experiential, so in the moment, practical learning, group discussions, and of course, sharing lived experiences from our team members such as Jan. So I'm going to pass the next slide to, please.
Thank you. So for my role as a peer mentor, I felt it was really important to have that peer support. The transition to adult services, as we, been saying, is a very challenging time as clients and families are trying to figure out where they will receive adult services, but, healthcare services, maybe looking at post-secondary day programs or job or volunteer opportunities, housing, funding, all of these require lots of time and lots of paperwork. So as a family leader with lived experience, just knowing what it's like and being able to let other families know that they're not alone, and help them to feel more comfortable going through the process, hopefully take some of that stress out of doing those tasks. And having been part of the human-centered design process and the pilot transitions pop-up, it was really a great way to work with ODSP and present a realistic lived experience around, what worked well and what was more challenging. And this way, it was a true collaboration to help clients and families get the information that they needed directly from the source and to get all of their questions answered. So next slide, please. So transition pop-ups prioritize, providing a warm handover and using this proactive approach, Holland Bloorview clients and families, they begin building relationships with new adult service staff before graduating from pediatric services. So, just for example, like having tours or introductory meetings, and clients and families, feel more comfortable having that personal connection to an agency rather than just, a referral to an unknown institution. And next slide, back to Laura.
Thank you, Jan. Now we'll shift gears to a different transition pop-up. So in those original slides with the photos, if you can just remember the March of Dimes Life program that was surrounded in green with the youth at the table who had done some sort of delicious looking cooking life skills programming. So we're going to take you now to another example of how we implemented the key elements of the transition pop-up model. This is our pop-up that runs several times a year in partnership with March of Dimes Canada Life Program, and that stands for Learning Independence for Future Empowerment Program. So March of Dimes Canada provides a wide range of services to people with disabilities. In particular, the Life program supports young people who are making the transition to adulthood. The program provides participants with a learning environment to expand their social, life, and professional skills while practicing the daily responsibilities of adulthood. The program offers a combination of life skills workshops, transit training, weekly social, recreational outings, fitness, and more, just as an example. So really a great agency and program to partner with and for Holland Bloorview to partner with. And really the goals in co-creating and executing this transition pop-up connect with the March of Dimes Life program. Is for Holland Bloorview youth and families to experience a day in the life of a potential future community program for adults, to participate in informal peer networking with other Holland Bloorview clients and March of Dimes adult mentors, become familiar with the LIFE program before graduating from pediatric services, and also for our younger youth to practice a new skill to support their autonomy. There's really a focus on finding and planning for meaningful daily activities for life after high school within current available resources, especially for youth and families who are looking for alternatives to post-secondary or work options. Next slide, please. Thanks.
So these events prioritize immersive experiences of trying out a community program for a day. So clients and families have the opportunity to try out a day in the LIFE program with staff and peer mentor support. So clients and families, they participate in a variety of fun activities, as Laura was saying, that focus on a wide variety of topics related to fostering social connections with a sense of belonging, as well as building life skills, that might be important for them in their day-to-day life. So examples of events topics include learning about safety in the community, healthy relationships, physical health, and volunteering and employment. So the LIFE program has successfully shifted to a virtual format. And as you can see pictured here, this is a virtual music therapy session. And it focused on enhancing a sense of well-being for Holland Bloorview and March of Dimes participants. Next slide, please. So peer mentoring is another essential component of the Transitions pop-up events, purposefully connecting Holland Bloorview clients who are approaching graduation from pediatric services with young adults. So some of whom are Holland Bloorview alumni and successfully engaging in the LIFE program. So during past in-person events, participants were given the freedom to, interact with each other, socialize, and learn from each other's experiences. So the events provided an opportunity for Holland Bloorview clients to take part in a very authentic day in the adult life within an environment, that would feel comfortable and natural to them. And the March of Dimes adult mentors, they look forward to taking on a mentorship role and meeting new people who could potentially join the program, someday. So next slide, please. So as far as our program evaluation, we have embedded an ongoing mixed methods program evaluations framework for each transitions pop-up. And the overall evaluation objectives are to determine self-reported changes in the participants' transition preparedness, participant and staff satisfaction, and just, areas of strength and improvement. So for each transitions pop-up, we conduct a robust pilot evaluation consisting of past session surveys with clients and families, ethnographic observations during the event, and a staff focus group. And so subsequent events are always evaluated using post-session client and family surveys and or staff surveys and possibly focus groups as appropriate. So then we collaborate with the adult agency partner to develop an action plan to implement those findings into future events. So we are, continually evaluating and iterate as the transitions, pop-ups, clients and families and systems evolve over time. Next, please. So here we wanted to share a quote from an 18-year-old youth who attended a transitions pop-up for the Connect with ODSP. So one of the family members shared their story, and it was definitely helpful because we were on the same story. She gave us information about scholarships and university. We talked, and we definitely learned from her experience. So, this quote really speaks to the value and meaning behind peer mentorship or, just learning from others who have been there before. So authentic partnerships with youth and families, they really enable us to present a realistic lived experience and very practical tips. So we frequently hear from clients and families that opportunities for peer mentorship are one of the most meaningful aspects of the events. Next slide, please. So now in this quote, this is an ODSP staff member who highlights their key learnings as a result of the work of the partnership. So I am committed to assisting clients and families that deal with ODSP. We can always find efficiencies and be better as a whole, and we must continue to be adaptable to the changes within our community and society. So this quote, is illustrative of how we're moving forward toward our goal of joint accountability between pediatric and adult partners in supporting clients and families in that transition journey to adult life. Next slide, please.
Thank you. Well, I also wanted to share feedback from caregivers from our March of Dimes pop-up, and I think this one really highlights a couple key points. So, this caregiver said that having these types of options. They saw the March of Dimes Life program for my child gives us more hope that there'll be different types of programs once she's transitioned out of high school programs. Having these experiences will always give her more confidence with different environments. So I think this really highlights the advantages of starting early with these sort of try before you buy models, immersing young people and their families in potential future programs before that formal transition date, so that they can start picturing themselves of like, okay, this is somewhere where we could see ourselves in the future. The other participants and staff here seem like the type of, people we're looking for. This program, seems like one she'll feel confident in. So really instilling hope and putting possibilities in people's minds early so that they have a context of like why they're doing all this preparation for the transition. They can picture, potentially where they're going. And we'll go to the next slide, please.
So to date, Holland Bloorview has partnered with more than 30 adult agencies to offer 18 unique transitions pop-ups with the capacity for more than 50 events per year. So topics cover a wide range of transition to adulthood priorities, as we've given some examples, such as health and wellness, personal care, life after high school, and many more. So a complete list of the transition pop-up events and descriptions can be found on the Holland Bloorview website. And next slide, please.
In the past year, the transition pop-up model at Holland Bloorview was recognized as a leading practice by Accreditation Canada, which we're very honored and grateful for. We look forward to continued collaboration with our community partners as we continue to offer these transition pop-ups to assist clients and families with moving towards a meaningful adult life. And also in the future, we feel that the transition pop-up model has the potential to be spread, so both provincially, nationally, and hopefully one day internationally as well. Next slide, please. As we were forming this presentation, our team sat down to do reflections on sort of key takeaways from the past 3 years of design work and these 18 unique pop-ups that we've implemented so far. So in reflecting, we really wanted to highlight the strong value of community and lived experience partnerships that the model provides. This allows us to provide really relevant and meaningful content from experts that are sort of complementary to maybe what we think of as a more traditional pediatric rehab, context or staff. So really allowing our participants to engage with and learn from meaningful others, including these youth and family mentors and really those community partners that they're bridging to. We also really see the immense value in starting the transition early, with many opportunities for practical action and gradual introductions to new services over time with scaffolding, to really work, do something different than this traditional sort of falling off the cliff, or sort of one day you're pediatric, the next day you're adult. We, really want to do this gradually and meaningfully. And finally, we really see the importance of robust service evaluation, because these events are, iterations, they're continuously evolving. And also this program is about evaluation is very important for accountability to our donors who make these programs possible. And we also always want to stay on our toes so that we're continually adapting this model to emerging needs, both in clients and families, and as the system changes. Next slide, please. And we couldn't leave here today without acknowledging the tremendous support from a variety of others who make this possible. So on our slide here, we really want to thank Holland Bloorview's Transition Strategy and CJ Curran, our Director of Transitions and Community Partnerships. Of course, the greater than 30 adult agency partners, and there are numerous staff involved. They have put so much work and energy into this. In these events, and also us merging our cultures together. And of course, we thank the clients and families who participated in these events over time. We'll go to the next slide, please. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us, and we would love to open the session up to your questions and comments.
In the Q&A, did you consider any alternatives to human-centered design, or was it an easy decision?
Thanks for that question. I think it's something that we really felt passionate towards, taking that very creative, detailed and lengthy approach versus sort of service providers and management, touting to be experts and coming in and sort of designing something without, that huge grounding in client, family, and community partner, sort of their end vision. And so we really hopped on that bandwagon along with our entire transitions strategy, because we felt it was so important to ground the work in the empathy. So really the end users' desires and hopes and what they would feel important.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
Another question. These are provincial programs, so would this work for patients and families who live outside of the GTA?
I think that's a wonderful question. We really aim to design a model that could be flexible and adapted. So you're right, like some of these are provincial programs, and so the actual information or content, would be relevant to youth in Ontario, let's say. However, I think as Jan so nicely outlined, those building blocks, the transition pop-up model really is a philosophy and approach that can be adapted. So in sort of those building blocks, there's one that's information sharing. So we anticipate that a pediatric and adult agency in a different part of, the province or Canada or even internationally could tweak those elements to meet their local context. And so that was, a really big learning for us in terms of the outcome of the design work is let's design a philosophy an approach that's broad enough so that it's adaptable wherever it would be useful to go. And we also know that, even if it's something is relevant, let's say, in Toronto or provincially now, the system's going to, funding's going to change, the system's going to change pretty quickly. And so by having key elements, we can just, update and tweak those elements over time based on, different contexts, different systems changes, etc. So I hope that sort of got at your question.
Well, we hope you speak at conferences and there's other programs, clinicians from other programs who can learn from this. Another question, for newly graduated rehabilitation professionals interested in starting to work in the space, where's a good place to start?
Yeah, we would actually, maybe I can put it in the chat. A few thoughts. So please feel free to visit hollandbluerview.ca/transitions. That is, a wealth of knowledge on different services, approaches, best practices for transition to adulthood. I think your enthusiasm is important. It's just lovely to hear that others are interested in this area. There have been amazing practice, best practice guidelines in the system published over the last year, including I believe it's the Canadian Pediatric Society, Health Quality Ontario, etc. So you could also take a look there. And I'm just wondering, Jan, too, from sort of a parent perspective, wisdom you might want to pass on to a new grad looking to enter this area.
Well, I think, as you know, as you said, like just sort of doing the research on the website, but also, you know, the people that we partner with, you know, checking out their websites too and the types of programs they offer for young adults, like March of Dimes or, you know, associations like Ontario Federation for Cerebral Palsy or, you know, places like that, where you could get more information too, I think might be helpful.
And never underestimate the value of speaking with a lived experience mentor. I remember
True.
the first year that I worked at Holland Bloorview, I was actually involved in some transitions programming. And I had the opportunity to spend the hour with a mother and her daughter who were now alumni. They happened to be in the building for something else, but they spent a whole hour just talking to me about their experiences, their wisdom, things they would want, you know, a staff to know. And I mean, it stuck with me. It still informs what I do each day. So if you ever have the chance to sit with someone like Jan or her son or, you know, people who have been through it, I would really recommend that.
Very helpful. We have to finish up. There's one last very short question. Do you have to be a current Holland Bloorview client in order to attend these pop-ups?
That's a great question. As of today, yes. However, we anticipate in the next year there may be some shifts to this. So the best source of information is always on our website. So stay tuned for what is coming down the pipelines.
Very much. That was very insightful and interesting. We'll finish up, and it's now time to transition back to the main room for our rapid podium presentations, which will start at 11:25 a.m. Thank you again to our speakers and everyone for joining us. Enjoy the rest of the conference.